tonight's presentation is Birding in the Antarctic by Laura Wolf. Laura recently visited the Antarctic and took extensive photos in preparation to use the images as a basis for her artwork. She's an elementary school art teacher and a freelance artist, receiving her bachelor's and also her master's in art education from Towson University. And she has taught elementary school art for 18 years. You don't look old enough, Laura. Besides teaching, she's mentored student teachers at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Her love of birds and Her love of birds and birding is seen in her artwork. And Laura, I couldn't resist. I got this off of your Facebook page. This is an example of Laura's artwork, and these little ducks are super cute. And the nice thing about these ducks is Laura is such a good birder that the field marks on these ducks are accurate, which is really refreshing when you see bird art out there. Sometimes you're like, not really a species. So thank you for your accuracy in your art. Laura was also the winner of the 2024 MOS pin design with her Harlequin duck, and she's a recipient of the 2024 Rookie of the Year award here, not for being a rookie birder by any means, but for being a rookie new member of the Howard County Bird Club, because she joined and soon she was leading field trips and she wrote articles for the Goldfinch. And now she's our presenter for tonight. So Laura, thank you. We welcome you, and let's welcome Laura Wolf.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm super excited to share my trip. It was beyond amazing. It was transformationally fun at a time I really needed a good time. So this was last January. Now remember, in the Southern Hemisphere, it is summer when it's winter here. So you must leave when it is frigid here. And as you can see, the landscapes are very dramatic and exciting. I know a lot of people don't necessarily think of Antarctica as a birding place. You might not get the longest list of species, but the ones you get are special. So I have lots and lots of photos to share with you. Various people have asked me a lot of questions, and these are some of the common questions. So these are some stats that I just put together, what people often ask about. So that is our ship, the Ocean Nova. And it was pretty intimate. There's much bigger ships. There's, I guess, some smaller ships too. This trip happened because my sweet, wonderful friend Laurie is a huge traveler herself, though not a birder, and did the research for us. So she's also a part-time travel agent. So she compared what companies and what packages made sense for us. You know, I'm a public school teacher. I can't do something too fancy. And it ended up being so much more attainable than I expected and so much more manageable. And a lot of people ask about the weather. It was much colder here at home. It was milder there. And I will say we got ridiculously lucky with weather. I don't know how common that is. So the original package we got through Antarctica 21 was around $6,000, including 5 days at sea on the Ocean Nova, only 1 day for landings. Now, in doing research for this, you have to manage your expectations because the weather gives what it gives and you can't assume anything. You might pay for this wonderful experience and not get to do landings. So you have to talk with yourself a lot ahead of time. But like I said, we got really lucky. So there was 1 day for landings, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And we left from Ushuaia, Argentina, and then we returned home by plane from King George Island in Antarctica off the peninsula back to the mainland in Punta Arenas, Chile. We added a few extra nights, especially before the boat departure, because you do not want to miss that ship. And also, here we are in Tierra del Fuego. You want to explore. You want to see what that's like. It's very beautiful. We added an extra night at the end in order to explore a Magellanic penguin colony. That was my 4th penguin species. And I did my own e-birding a lot of the time. There were some really wonderful naturalists, which I'll talk some more about in a little bit. But I did prepare a fair amount. One tool that was really great is this here book, and I have it resourced at the end of my slideshow if you're curious to do some research yourself. We saw a lot of whales and seals and sea lions too. And if you're a photographer, this is what I brought. I didn't need the longest lens. I felt like this was probably the right fit. So this is what our journey looked like. I'm an art teacher. I put it in rainbow order. So we start with red, and there's Ushuaia. And I found on the boat that I was basically the only real birder. There was one other guy that was a bird nerd as well. But most of the travelers were just like interesting, adventurous people that just wanted to see what this strange and amazing place was like. And so I assume maybe a lot of people, if they can manage it, will save up for the South Georgia Islands. Oh, boo. South Georgia Islands or the Orkneys. And if you can see them to the side, they're not on the way. They're not nearby. They add a lot of time. They add a lot to the cost of the trip. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to manage that. So we did this is basically a somewhat abbreviated version of the experience, but it did not feel like a compromise at all to me. So we did our landings in the area of Half Moon Island. The next morning, there's an airstrip on King George Island. And it's like gravel, but it's totally legit. And we flew back to Chile from there. So it is kind of complicated, but there's all the moving parts. Ushuaia is the most southern town in Argentina. Totally gorgeous. Not super huge, similar population to Columbia, Maryland. It's just circled by mountains. So everywhere you look, it's a beautiful background in every photo. And then there's a lovely harbor and the Beagle Channel, which is very calm because it's kind of protected. And we were catty corner to this wonderful little bakery, and we started our days walking catty corner from our Airbnb to get a little treat and a coffee. And all the dessert was like dulce de leche on everything, filled inside everything. It was so good. Everyone was very, very kind and patient with us. I have like high school Spanish, which I haven't really used enough. My friend started working with the app Duolingo to get a little Spanish going, and we got along just great. Everyone was so happy that we had come. The Uber drivers were, "Are you having fun?" Like they were very concerned to make sure we were having a good experience. So the very first day we rented a car and drove to the national park, Tierra del Fuego National Park. It's very windy. Weather is highly variable. It would rain a pocket, sunny for a while, rain for a while, sun for a while. Laurie spotted me, my Andean condor. Thank you, Laurie. And this is a black-chested buzzard eagle. They were pretty common. I saw them at least once a day when I was in this area. So very, very cool. And it's nice too when you go to a whole other country and you're like, "I know this friend. This is my friend." It's so much like our American robin, behaves very similarly, sounds very similar, and bops along on the ground and occasionally will hold still, which we love. There is lots of baby birds on this trip because it's their summer. So I have a little young rufous-colored sparrow taking a bath, and terns are just so elegant and lovely to watch them hunting. So here's the South American tern. So the southern lapwing is kind of like a super glamorous killdeer. They kind of occupy a similar niche. They run around on the ground. They're very, very loud. And you'll notice if I hit this laser, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, well, it's up there. There's a spur. Look at the little tiny red spur up there. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, so I thought that was a nice surprise. I didn't see it in the field until I looked at my photo and I was like, how about that? And then down at the bottom, we have a fire-eyed duocun, which is, I believe, related to flycatchers. And no, I can't tell what's in his mouth. But they will also hold still and perch out in the open a little bit so you can enjoy them preening and living their lives. Chilean swallows zipping around everywhere, very similar to our tree swallows. Black-chinned siskin, as you might imagine, also resemble our goldfinch friends. I was trying to find insects The only one I found is this bumblebee, which is non-native. So I was like, that was interesting, kind of surprising, but there it is. This adorable family I got to watch for quite a while. The upland geese are really, really handsome. The male is in the back, the female is in the front, and we have a brand new gosling. So cute. So after driving, it really only took up like the morning to do the national park. It wasn't quite as extensive as I expected, but it was great. But it left us a leisurely afternoon. So we had a wonderful little tea and lunch at this tea house near the Marshall Glacier. So that's the Marshall Glacier you see pictured. We did part of the walk. We didn't do all of it, but it was very pretty. Not super birdy at that time of day. So I just noted some interesting plants and a cool looking fungus that I found. The second day, Laurie just kind of enjoyed the town, and I had a birding guide. His name is Esteban Daniels. He was lovely. He was great. I felt totally safe with him, even though I was by myself. And he took me to several locations. It was a great help. He let me know that timing-wise, the famous woodpecker in this area is the Magellanic woodpecker, similar silhouette to our beautiful pileated, but even bigger. We were not able to find them because the nestlings had already fledged. So that's okay. I guess I have to go back again. So we have an adorable little tufted tit tyrant, and they behave a little bit like a chickadee or a kinglet, very speedy, very small, cute little bird. We have a white-throated tree runner, as you might imagine, a lot like our brown creepers. An Austral blackbird with a little treat. A white-crested Elania, which is another flycatcher, kind of like our peewees. And I think right about this time, they had split the northern and southern house wren, so that means it's a new species for me on this trip. It did sound a little bit different. And then on the end, we have the thorn-tailed rayadito, also kind of wren or chickadee-like super cute little buddy. And birders know how to have a good time. And when you want to have a good time, you go to the dump. So here's all the fun we had at the dump. We had a very cooperative crested caracara, the white-throated caracara in the middle at the top. That's the one that's a little bit harder to find, and you need to go to the dump to get this bird. And then at the bottom, you see a group of chimango caracaras. So they're quite a bit smaller, and they're very common. You could see them, you know, on lights in the city zipping around. Lovely little birds. And we started to meet some gulls. So here we have a kelp gull. And then up at the top is a little buff-winged cinclures. I kept seeing them in like piles of rocks hiding. The very beautiful dolphin gull, kind of smaller than the kelp, super, super handsome. And then these are both kelp geese. On the top we have the male, on the bottom we have the female and some juveniles kind of just poking around on the rocky beach. And as we arrived at this rocky beach, we startled some black-faced ibises. And see what I mean about like no bad backgrounds everywhere you look. Beautiful mountains. So it was fun to watch the gulls kind of scavenge. There's a group of species in the northern hemisphere, they're called Jaegers. In the southern hemisphere, they're called skuas. So we have here a Chilean skua, and the way they're parasitic, so they will harass other birds until they surrender their meal, and then the skua eats it. And you might think, gosh, how do they stand that? This poor gull at the top is in that situation right there, the skua wins. And then he just sits with the other gulls peacefully, and they all just resign themselves to their fate. So it's just kind of funny how that works. And I'm a big fan of oyster catchers. They're really fun. So it was nice to catch some more at oyster catcher. There's a blackish oyster catcher. They like rocky beaches versus the mud. And you'll see I got another one later. In the harbor, the day we were supposed to get on the boat, we had a leisurely start to the day. We didn't have to board until 3. So we had some nice food, and I was able to kind of explore a little urban park right in the harbor. And it was very pretty and relaxing. There was plenty of duck activity. So I also saw this very beautiful Patagonian Sierra finch, kind of cardinally sized-ish. The crested ducks had some ducklings as well, and then these beautiful red shovelers. So the female has her head tucked in, and the males have their heads out. I just noted a plant that I thought was interesting looking, and in this shot you can actually see the crest of the crested duck a little bit. You can't always see the field marks that birds are named for, so I had a shot where you could. And here you get a closer look at the Chimango caracara. I got to see one kind of playing around in a stream and bathing and kind of relaxing. And then there's a little crested duckling. And another great show from a South American tern, swooping and diving. So graceful and lovely to watch. So we set sail and immediately, oh, hi, there's a whale. Oh, hi, there's an albatross. So albatrosses are one of the birds I'm most excited to meet. I first heard an interview with Peter Harrison on the ABA podcast. And this man, you got to listen to him talk. He's just completely enchanting, and he makes you want to go to Antarctica real bad. So he has tons and tons, a lifetime of experience, and his book had been recently reissued, which is considered the seabirding book. So I actually went to go see him talk in Cape May. He was incredible, and I was like, I got to be a part of this experience. So this albatross wasn't even that far away from land, but gosh, it was cool. And there's some very handsome cormorants and a sei whale. There's also the Beagle Channel. So you're heading out in the evening, it's calm. There's the town, it's tranquil and beautiful. So it's easy at that point. And then you go to bed. And when you wake up, or maybe in the middle of the night, you're going to enter the Drake Passage. We'll get to that in a little bit, but this is the staff that helped so much. They were amazingly organized. We had an ornithologist, his name was Nigel, and then his adorable wife, Wendy, was the marine biologist. There was an ice guy, there was a historian, there was a wonderful photographer that helped me tweak some things with my camera. Nobody was ever condescending in any way. They were all really grateful and excited to be there, and really quite thrilled, and their energy is contagious. So I ended up spending a lot of time with the naturalists out on deck, because that's what I wanted to do. If you want to see the whales and you want to see the birds, if you're not eating or sleeping, it's best to get out. So when you want to see whales, it's easier to spot them at the bow, the front of the ship. And if you want to catch the albatrosses and the other cool birds, it's easiest aft in the back. So you meet all the staff, they're there to help you. And in the Drake Passage, which is famous for being tumultuous, but as I said, we got very lucky. I was awakened by rocking though, and I was like, I guess we're in it now. And I just went back to sleep somehow. So they'll give you, the meals were lovely, not fancy, but pleasant, delightful. And then they give you a sense of what's coming tomorrow and a little meeting every day. So that's what that slide is that everyone's taking a picture of in that picture. And that gives you a sense of what might go on in during the day. So all the different experts gave talks to help prepare you and keep you entertained and answer your questions. And you can see Nigel and Sergey are using rope to show the wingspan of each bird. And yes, I did get to see a pintado petrel or a Cape petrel, but I did not get a photo. Take your camera to every meal. I did not. We saw it out the window, and I didn't have my camera. They're very beautiful black and white birds. So I have a little video here, the Drake Passage. Maybe Matt can help me out. I tried to keep my camera steady as the boat was moving so you could see what the rolls look like. That's beautiful. All right, it's short. So I had reason to expect I would be ill. If you are at all considering this, I recommend you try a pelagic trip, and not a short one, a long one. I did one out of Hatteras in North Carolina with Kate and Brian, and it was incredible, but I had a rough time. And so I was like, I already paid for this Antarctica trip. What am I going to do? It's 2 days to get across the Drake Passage. So I collected any colloquial solutions and anything I could find, even if I didn't believe it would work, I bought it anyway. And I talked to my doctor, and fortunately for me, there is a scopolamine patch, which you put behind your ear. Yep, I see your friends have enjoyed its benefits. Thank goodness I didn't get sick at all. This patch was magic for me. That's my mileage. I don't know what yours will be, but it sure is nice to know that there is a good, easy solution. And I didn't need the ginger pills or the little zappy thing for my wrist. And I was just floating on cloud nine the whole time. So my little birds, like this sooty shearwater, I started putting the wingspan just to give you a sense, because of course the albatrosses make that extra interesting later. They're very speedy. They're hard to photograph. The boat is moving, your lens is heavy, it's windy. You get what you get, but gosh, they are fun to watch. So these are some of the little friends that I enjoyed encountering. And the naturalists are a huge help. As you can see, a lot of them are super duper similar. And their experience, not just in field marks, but being at this location in the Drake Passage, you expect slender-billed prion. At this location in the Drake Passage, you expect Antarctic prion. That kind of feedback was a huge help, especially when I was the one having eBird. I do wish I had paid for the nice Wi-Fi, because putting the location correct was not simple. The blue petrel was thankfully very easy to ID. So if you look at the end of the tail, it's white. Thanks, friend, for being different from the prions. And they're all very fast and cute. So many at-bats to get these photos. And then the white chin petrel is another one of those birds, like the red-bellied woodpecker and the ringneck duck. Good luck finding the white chin. There's a few photos where you can see a tiny smidge, but they reminded me a lot of the sooty shearwater from the other page. So I was lucky enough to see these gorgeous dolphins, hourglass dolphins. They're pretty small, about 5 feet long, really speedy, very beautiful. We had 3 separate sightings of them on this trip. And Nigel, the ornithologist, said, I've been doing this 19 years and I've only seen them twice. So that kind of gives you a sense of like the extraordinary possibility of surprise on an Antarctic trip, like how different each trip is going to be, what you might stumble onto, what you might be lucky enough to observe. And then these fin whales were also another one. Paul, the historian, spotted them for us. And then the birds that end up coming closest, now I'm an artist, I find beauty in everything. Their faces are a little rough. The southern giant petrel and the northern giant petrel are the tubiest of tube noses. So if you look at their bill structure, there's a big hole on top. That is a mechanism that lets them drink salt water without getting ill. As you can imagine, a seabird needs that really badly. And they were the most curious. I got the best shots of them. They will fly straight over your head. And they don't have to flap very much. As you can see, they can just kind of kite along very easily and gently. So they were really cool, and they added a lot to the experience, even if they're a little peculiar looking. You'll note that we saw a lot more of the northern giant petrel, even though we were in Antarctica. The southern was harder to find, but they have a little pink tip to the end of their beak. And my albatross friends. So the top, you have a light mantled albatross. So he's quite a bit smaller than these giants if you look at the wingspan. So the smaller family of albatrosses are called mollymalks, according to Peter Harrison. And then there's these enormous ones that have been split, I think, originally from wandering. Wandering albatross was broken up into several subspecies that became species, and more are still being discovered. But the southern royal and the snowy are both species that can get a wingspan up to 12 feet. That is Laura's dad on each side. 2 dads. It's welcome. It's mind-boggling. They were also pretty curious about the boat and content to hang out for a long time. The gray-headed had one nice appearance and then beat it. So I'm so glad I got a picture. That individual has a really pretty beak, a little bit of a yellow stripe at the top, kind of hard to see. But the southern royal and the snowy hung around for a long time, and they just float around in these big, lazy loops. And there's no flapping, so you can easily like predict where they're going to end up. and they're just amazing. It looks so effortless. You look at a vulture and think their flight is effortless. This is even more so somehow. It's a little mind-boggling. I'm so excited to see them. You can't see the reverse of the Southern Royal, but it has a lot less white on the top side than the snowy. That's how you're supposed to differentiate. So day 6, we have our landing, more pleasant, easy weather. And we have a morning landing on a chinstrap colony, in the afternoon, a Gen 2 colony. And in the middle, some people intentionally got in the water. An Antarctic plunge. It was scheduled. People signed up for it and did it on purpose. That's not me. But each landing was 3 hours. So that felt really substantial. Like we had plenty of time. We weren't hurried. The staff went ahead of us and kind of spread themselves out, would kind of flag areas where we were supposed to go or not supposed to go. They're all on duty to make sure everyone is behaving properly and answering any questions. And you would ride out in groups. They would call you by your cabin number to come. And in this package, you borrow boots. In fancier packages, they give you boots or they give you a nice coat. And in my case, we wore our own coat and it was great. So they take you out on these Zodiacs, these big sturdy rubber boats. And they're very clear, like anytime you need to go back for any reason, we will take you back. That is okay. But they take the contamination threat very seriously, as they should. So the process of coming and going is slow because of that. So you wash your boots when you're about to leave. You wash your boots when you're about to come back to the boat. All of that is monitored really carefully and nothing touches the ground. You're not allowed to sit. You're not allowed to touch anything. If you want a walking pole, they'll give you one that's sanitized. You don't need to bring your own. And the first landing was pretty slippery, so I can see why you would want one. The seaweed in particular was pretty slippery. And one thing that makes penguins so wonderful when you want to take a picture is they're not going to fly away, they're not going to run away, and the only native plants are this tall. So there's no branches, there's no leaves in the way. You can't take a bad picture of a penguin. You don't need a fancy pants camera, by the way. Laurie got excellent photos with her phone. So don't feel like you need to invest in a camera because of this, unless you're trying to paint from them. It probably won't matter at all. So those are the only 2 native plants. The pearlwort is the one that looks like moss. So here's our 2 colony friends, the chinstrap on the left and the Gen 2 on the right. They're both about the same size. They're both brush-tailed penguins. You can kind of see the edge of the tail poking out. They're described that way. Various penguins are also called jackass penguins. I don't know why some get it and some don't. They all are pretty loud. They all kind of sound like that. And I have some videos so you can hear later. So, you know, these penguins will build a rocky nest, and carrying rocks and stealing them is a way to bond. So even though the chicks are obviously doing really well, the nest was done, everybody's hatched, they're still bringing each other rocks. They're keeping the love alive. And here's a little chinstrap baby. I don't know if you guys have watched many baby birds get fed. It's not as alarming as herons and egrets, where you're like, oh, somebody's getting punctured. It's not like that, but it is kind of gross, but which of course I love. They're comedy gold. They're riveting. They're better than any TV. You've got to be made of stone not to want to watch everything they do. When they sleep, they lay on the ground like a little roly-poly football. And I looked up this statistic about how much they rest and the manner in which they rest. It's wild. And they don't have boundaries. So the staff prepares you like, you need to stay 15 feet away. But the penguins don't know that, and they could be right behind you. So even though you're elated with excitement, you have to remember to look who's nearby, and they have carved out little penguin highways that they like to travel on, and you're allowed to walk on them, but if there's a penguin, you give them the right of way. And it is a little bit easier to walk there. So you see all this smeary red stuff, that's the seaweed I was talking about. And I don't have kids, but I am an elementary school teacher, and I just kind of relate to this expression here. So when you're watching a penguin family, it's hard work, right? Feeding them is a hard work. And eventually you can watch the spouses kind of trade off shifts. So somebody is neat and tidy and they come straight from the sea and they swap out with the other partner who gets to go eat, and they take turns. So there's hundreds of them in this colony. They're everywhere. So that everywhere you look, it's a good time. Here's one being fed. And it's just very tender moment too at first, because the babies will just lean their heads back in this way that just looks so innocent. And then their head is enveloped by the adult. And sometimes it's kind of gross. And I also sing in a choir. The men used to always wear tuxedos. Now only some people have occasion to do tuxedos, but of course you can't look at a penguin and not think of tuxedos. So I see this, and it looks a little like choir rehearsal to me, or a concert, and they bellow as a group. They're rearing their heads back, like watching a tiny bird, like a prairie warbler, just commit with its whole body when it's about to sing. Even its tail is vibrating when it sings. And even a roly-poly bird like that still commits that hard to the noise. I just think that's so fun to watch. And yes, it's very fragrant too. Kind of traveling in the way. So there is one special individual that we happen to witness. He pops up occasionally. There's an individual macaroni penguin that the chin straps seem a little mystified by, but they weren't rude to him or anything. They were just like, oh, him. So we got to see one very adorable macaroni penguin. The expansion has to happen somehow, so you need a few brave souls that will strike out and maybe see if there's another place they could be nesting. So hopefully that could be range expansion someday. And this is the Gentoo family. There's not as much seaweed here, so they look much cleaner. And there are a lot more seals basking on this beach. The babies just kill me. Look at that little flipper. And they just seem a little bit more graceful. Like this one on the left just looks like he has impeccable manners, like after you, madam. And we have another fine singer in the middle. And, they still need to maintain their feathers, even though they're not flying with them. So watching them find ways to preen, and they're surprisingly flexible. That's really cute too. And there's one of the little Gentoo chicks being fed. So there are like quite a bit more of them, over 1,000 in this colony. The way they walk is adorable. And this is a really interesting bird, the snowy sheathbill. It's kind of pigeon-like. And they kind of hang around the penguins and try and grab whatever leftovers they can reach. I didn't really expect to get the chance to see one of them, but that was interesting. There's really no other bird I've ever seen that looks like that. There was a research station. Antarctica is an interesting exercise in building connections with different countries and for science and research purposes. So unfortunately, one of our travelers did try to go over there, but they were recruited to return in time. But we were told, no, please don't bother the researchers, please don't. Many of you, if you have been out on a boat for a while, you might have seen a Wilson storm petrel. They're really widespread, very speedy, kind of like a swallow in size. And they look like they're tap dancing on the water. They're really fun to watch. They actually nest here. So we saw them kind of zigging and zagging in and out of these rock formations. So this is probably a brown skua, but there are also Antarctic skuas, and they're so similar that the naturalists were a little reluctant to be like, it's this one or that one. And they hybridize a lot. So that is my best guess. But they behave similarly to the Chilean skuas that we saw in another slide. And oh man, the collector in me really wanted to pick up that penguin skull. What a cool thing, but I didn't do it. So I just took a picture. And there's one of the other imperial cormorants. Sometimes they're called imperial shag, depending on who you ask. And then there is an Antarctic tern. So seals. The first seal, I looked at that and I was like, this is a seal, not a sea lion. You might have heard that seals typically have ears that aren't visible, and sea lion ears are typically visible. And I did a little research. They are more closely related to sea lions, but they're still called fur seals. And that was the species of all this group where the staff member was posted, because apparently at this time of year, hormones make them a little bit more aggressive. There was no incident, not even close, but the Weddell seals are really, really cute. And they're also very careful just to make sure you don't get too close. Everyone's monitoring. There was a baby, and they had put flags in an X so that we couldn't go see the baby. So very responsible. The elephant seals do a molt where they shed the outer layer of skin, and it takes a lot of energy. So they have to bask and lay out of the water so they don't get too cold. And the females and the males do it at different times of year. So these are all ladies, so you don't see that big snoot that you want from an elephant seal, but they're still super, super cool to see. And then we're winding down. We had our landings. The next morning, we board a plane that looks like a penguin. It's Antarctic Airlines. It's called that. And we had an adorable penguin meal. And that a kind of harsh looking place is where the airstrip is. That was from the airstrip. It was behind me. And I got to see one of the white giant petrels from there. There's a white morph, but I didn't get a photo. So we fly very quickly back to Punta Arenas, Chile, which, as you can see, has a lot of European influence in the architecture. And I arranged for us to have a trip to visit the Magellanic penguin colony. Weather was apparently a little iffy. We couldn't really discern that from land, but it was delayed. So I wait around. I look for more birds while I wait for the boat. So that is a little female Austral negrito, these super cute little white tufted grebes. And then there's two famous families of ducks here, the flying steamer duck and the flightless steamer duck. This is the flying steamer duck. So they're referred to as steamer ducks because they have a habit of flapping their wings and kind of coasting along the surface and generating a lot of spray like steam. And the flightless I did get to see, but they're very far away. Not a paint-worthy photo, but still a very interesting bird. And then there's yellow-billed pintail and yellow-billed teal, a little tricky to tell apart. The pintail is bigger, and you still see like the build, the similar like slimness of the northern pintail in the neck, and the proportions are still there, even though the tails are not that pinny. And here's another wonderful oyster catcher friend. And then some red-banded coots, a little baby getting fed. The red band is on the bill, a little hard to make out. And then these are Magellanic snipe. So we still got a lot of fun stuff to see waiting for the boat. And this trip, you only get an hour, so I was a little bit frantic trying to document everything. But it was still really cool. I got a Baird sandpiper and white rump was there as well. This little guy is a short-billed miner. And then here's a family of Chilean skuas, and again, fresh baby, so tiny, so soft looking. And then a little kelp gull family. So they were all kind of scattered around the island. And these penguins are the Magellanic penguins. As you can see, they're a little older than the other crew, and they have burrows. So they dig, and you can see kind of behind them, there's a hole. So they need like softer dirt as a substrate. So it was lovely to see all the different behaviors. The one on the left, I believe that is friendly allopreening. So that's a way for birds to bond. So you see adults doing it, you see the baby learning to do it. And then there was a little bit, this one looked more like a squabble to me. There was bill clapping and it was quite a bit noisier. Still so fun. But here's a little youngster. And the fluff is very cheap, which is charmingly awkward. And here's another choir rehearsal. I just love it. We went near and past this island to see the sea lions, but we didn't leave the boat. You can really see why they're called sea lions though. Look at this male up in the front. Wow, beefy, beefy mane. And then the little smaller, darker ones are pups, youngsters. There were also a few gulls and cormorants hanging out with them. So that was really cool to see too. And here's a little Gentoo being so polite. She's saving you a spot, but you cannot sit next to her. You are not allowed. So I hope this can like help you consider this as an experience that you might want to do, because I just can't recommend it enough. It made me feel like I could do anything. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to give you this feeling. So I also saved a lot of resources from my notes and my research and places to go. Like we had a long, long layover. So I wrote down what I packed, where we ate, what I ate, all this stuff that you might want to know if you're actually planning a trip. And I learned a lot from the Antarctica travel group on Facebook as far as how to prepare. Almost every question you would need answered has already been asked, so you can just search. And then this guide is the book I was showing you. It's super, super, super well organized. It's set up for a trip just like this. So instead of putting everything in one place together, it's divided by the stages of your voyage. There's a section for the Beagle Channel as you're leaving. There's a section for the Drake Passage as you're heading through there. There's an Antarctic section, which really helps you parse things that could be confusing because you're like, I'm in a place where I don't expect to run into this. Is really clear and well organized. There are clever little diagrams to help you figure out how much of a whale's back you see after their blow, the shape of their blow, the shape of their dorsal. Really, really smart. And there was an app as well. I didn't use it as much, but you can do it without Wi-Fi, so you can download it and reference it without the need for internet. And then I also have a Flickr photo album of highlights because there's more. And there's the first painting I did in reference to my trip. So there you have it. This is Antarctica. You can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. Yes. So I assume there's probably some questions. I did go into more logistics in this presentation than probably a lot of others would, just because I thought you'd be curious about how complicated it is or isn't. Was there anybody that wanted to ask a question? Sue?
I'm just curious, what did you take, how did you take the video? Did you do it with your camera or did you do it with your phone?
Sue was asking how I recorded the videos. That's just my iPhone. It was an iPhone 12. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, your phone is enough to document a lot of this cool stuff, for sure. Anybody else? Mary Lou?
So. So, would you do this again?
Oh, happily.
heavens.
Can you tell? Yeah, I'd do it again, all right. You betcha. Thank you. Anybody else? Greg?
That thing you showed with the rocks, I think there's a title for that called pebbling,
Oh, there you go, yeah.
where you can give people pictures and it's imitating what penguins do when they bring a rock for their mate.
There you go. Lovely. Yeah, it was really fun to watch, fun behavior. Robin?
Yeah,
The sheep bill looks like that because of the scavenger.
Kind of like our vulture friends, the caruncles on the face. Yeah, the sheathbill. Really interesting looking bird. Robin?
I'm curious about the flightless steamer ducks. Where do you find them? Inshore or where?
They were on a rocky beach and pretty far back, so just kind of all in a big group. And I would have been curious to see if something had startled them, how the flightless steamer ducks would react. But yeah, that's where we saw them on like a long stony peninsula. Matt?
How far in advance did you book your trip?
It was probably a year and a half.
Okay.
Just because we're very proactive and we want to have everything, all those ducks in a row. Flightless or flying ducks, we want them in a row. So there are deals like this Facebook group that I referenced. There's frequently like last minute deals for cool stuff that is surprisingly cheap. But being a teacher, I can't just up and disappear. I just can't. I gotta be organized. But maybe you can up and disappear. I don't know. Anybody else? Yes, Dave?
How did you find the bird guide for onshore?
How did I find my bird guide? I think I probably just Googled for bird guides at Ushuaia, and his company is called Birding Ushuaia. I don't remember getting a recommendation from anyone, if that's what you were asking, but he was great. Esteban Daniels.
We have a question online. What was the tour name?
The tour name, the company was Antarctica 21, and we did sail and fly. So we sailed through the Drake Passage and we flew over. There's tours where you sail both legs of the Drake Passage. There's tours where you fly over both legs of the Drake Passage. You would miss all the whales and all the albatrosses, but you still get to Antarctica. So there's a lot. That's why it was so confusing to work out how I wanted to do this, because there's a billion options. And a lot of companies with like long experience and a lot of feedback and good reputations.
The real sort of, you said they were washing, when you went ashore, they washed your boots off before you.
Right,
What were
and
they-
scrub
What were
them.
they using, bleach, or what are they?
I didn't.
You're putting your foot in the.
Robin's asking how they sanitized the boots before we departed. I'm not sure what was in the solution. I don't remember it smelling strongly, but there was a bath that you stepped into and brushes that you scrubbed with. And it took a while to get to be really sure.
Yeah. Was there any point in brushing coming back onto the boat? I mean.
We did it in the water when we were returning back to the boat. We washed
Okay.
in the edge of the water.
Yeah.
And you want the boots are very tall. You want waterproof pants. So I didn't really feel the water at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have liked to have gone with a group of birds or ever been in
I was asked if it would be something to consider going with birders. I was not sure I would get another opportunity. It takes a special kind to want to go on this kind of adventure. And the idea didn't come from me. I'm sure it would be an absolute blast with other birders. And there are birding oriented trips that are everyone's on board is a birder. So I'm sure you would spot a lot of goodies that way. But this was just the version of this experience that I thought I could personally manage.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. That was so entertaining.
Oh, good.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Next month, Tom Seibert will be our speaker, and he's going to talk about the trip that they all took to Costa Rica that was scheduled by Bonnie Ott last year.